Good morning, everyone. My name is Feyi Olubodun. The trick to pronouncing the name is remember to stress the Y. Once you pronounce the Y, you'll be close enough not to get me upset. So, but it's okay. It's nice to meet every one of you. For some strange reason, every time I come, there are more females in the class than males. I have no idea why. What are the guys doing? Nobody's interested in marketing anymore from the male side. Has anyone here ever been to Africa? Everybody. Which part of Africa did you go to? What? South Africa? South Africa as a country or just the southern part of Africa?
Cape Town.
Cape Town. Beautiful place. That's not Africa, by the way. I just actually. Anyone else? Kenya? The safari and stuff? Yeah. Okay. North Africa. Which part? Morocco. Casablanca. Nice. Nice place. Any other parts? Yes?
Morocco and also
Senegal. Now you're getting close to Africa. Any other interesting place? Did you know that in Kenya they still have the Maasai tradition? To become a man, you have to kill a lion. Yeah. We don't have that, unfortunately, in Nigeria. So I asked that question because typically when people go to South Africa, South Africa is, in Africa we say that South Africa as a country is not really part of Africa. It's more like the West in so many ways, except for occasional incidents of xenophobia and all of that. But relatively, if you go to places like Cape Town, Joburg, it's almost like anywhere in the West. But the closer you come to the middle of Africa, the closer you come to experiencing what the real African is like, you know. This is not because I'm Nigerian. One of the best ways to understand Africa and African consumers is to come to Nigeria, particularly Lagos. And I had a chat with some partners in the US recently who were concerned about security issues because of the Boko Haram and all of that. And we'll talk a bit about that somewhere in the middle of this. And I pointed out to them that Boko Haram is somewhere in the northeast of the country, which is 3 days journey to Lagos, where all of the marketing and all of the business is happening. And so it's pretty safe. And if you were Caucasian, you can actually walk the streets of Lagos at 2 a.m. in the night and nothing will happen to you. Trust me. Because, I mean, people are used to seeing a lot of foreigners. There's a huge expat community in Nigeria today because of all the multinational companies coming in. And all the expat community, they go to all the Nigerian clubs and all of that. We have a saying in Lagos that there is no party like a Lagos party. Trust me, it is true. Okay, so, well, had the introductions. So I'll talk to you about Nigeria, not exactly. I'll show you a video introducing Nigeria in just under 2 minutes or so. Then I'll also show you another video sort of giving you an elevator pitch of Inside Communications where I work. And then we've got about 3 main sections. One is the village, as I call it, which talks about the structure of community within which the African lives. And it's very important to understand that context because once you get the context, it's then easy for you to understand the African. As a matter of fact, once you get the context within which any consumer comes from, you always understand how to market to them and how to engage to them. Because the consumer will always buy your product within a particular context. Is that not so? Which is why sometimes we tell clients that if you want to test your product, I think GSK has done this really well. Don't test the product in a room with 8 people in a focus group. Test it in the real environment where they will experience the product. So that's why GSK they've got this shopper science lab where they simulate the retail environment and then they test the product there because it's closer to that. Section 2, that's Pidgin English, today na today, which means this is the day. That's a Pidgin. And it's basically to show you a day in the life of the African. or the Nigerian, if you will, and to highlight certain moments of receptivity and how you can use those contexts in there to also engage with moments of truth. I'm assuming that we all understand moments of receptivity, moments of truth, and I'm speaking to very highly educated marketers here, so no need to. And then section 3, what do you mean? And here I want to talk about what are the cues that you need to use to engage these consumers, from drama to humor to music to certain occasions and all. And I've actually laced through the entire presentation. I've got different campaigns and work that we've done for you to view that actually shows this. And then somewhere at the end, I'll just talk a little bit about what the retail environment is like, and then we'll take it forward. So we're using the Nigerian as a template for the simple reason that Nigeria is the largest country population-wise in Africa, 170 million people and growing. 30 years from now, we'll hit 300 million people, which is like the population of the US right now. Nigeria is relatively a small country, but it's big in Africa, small compared to the rest of the world. It's the size of California with the population of Russia, which doesn't sound... And then with the birth rate, at the end of this year, the way you can visualize the population growth rate is that just imagine adding the country of Romania into Nigeria in 1 year. We have so many children, it's amazing. So that's how it is. And also, if you can sell to Nigerians, you can sell to everybody else. We have the right level of complexity to represent the continent in a country that has over 350 ethnic languages, all of them so different from each other that, I mean, you can literally meet somebody else and you don't understand their language. There's a particular town in Nigeria, it's called Akoko, A-K-O-K-O. And there's so many languages, so many dialects in that particular town that the joke is that that was where the Tower of Babel was built. Because if you walk 2 streets down, you won't understand the language of the other person. And this is actually a fact. So with that level of complexity and cultural differences, it's so culturally different that there are actually real issues with intercultural marriages within the same country. You find that it's difficult for people from the southeastern part of the country to marry somebody from the southwestern part, or somebody from the northern part, or somebody from the south part of the country, and it's the same country. And so we sometimes joke that a Nigerian is first of all his tribe, then a Nigerian. It's not the other way. It's not the other way around, you know. And one of the things that creates issues in intercultural marriages, for instance, is that there is such a diversity in the palate that just cooking for the new husband is a horror film, you know, because some parts of the country, they eat a lot of spice, some parts don't eat spice at all, some parts eat too much seasoning, some parts don't eat too much seasoning, you know. It's all a crazy place. So if you can sell to that market, 170 million of these diverse people, you can basically sell to everywhere else, because if the further down you go in the continent, the more homogeneity you begin to experience. People are not that different in those other countries. However, the perspective that I'll be taking, it's more of a psychological and marketing view than an economic or sociological view. On Friday in the talk, I'll take more of an economic and sociological view and talk a bit more about the numbers to the number side of bringing brands in and succeeding. But for this one, we're just going to talk about the psychological nuances and the marketing view to what we want to do. So Nigeria in 2 minutes or more.
This is Nigeria. Population 170 million. 70% below age 30. Over 250 languages and ethnicities. The 8th largest exporter of crude oil in the world. Africa's biggest economy with a GDP of $510 billion. A country beset by historical, political, and religious instability and fiscal policy inconsistencies which cripple economic growth. Having Africa's largest labor force but poor infrastructure has created huge unemployment. Low electric power generation has crippled the growth of the manufacturing and service sectors. Large-scale corruption cripples growth in almost every sector and creates a huge divide between rich and poor. In a country with one of the world's largest number of private jets, many still struggle to make ends meet. But wait and ponder this. Nigerians are one of the world's happiest people according to a Gallup poll. Nigeria is one of the fastest growing consumer markets in the world. Nigeria's middle class jumped sixfold to 23 million in 14 years. That's more than the population of most African countries. Despite its political and economic issues, Nigeria still receives the highest number of direct foreign investment on the African continent. Nigeria is home to Africa's wealthiest business leaders. In Nigeria, adversity quickly becomes opportunity. The inadequacy of public power supply has created one of the world's biggest markets for power-generating sets. Nigerian entertainment celebrities are the biggest influencers of pop culture across Black Africa. This is Nigeria, the country with the greatest variety of butterflies in the world. The sixth sexiest accent in the world, according to CNN. Most sexually satisfied people, according to Durex. The greatest number of twin births in the world. According to legend, a particular Nigerian variety of beans causes this. This is Nigeria, home of the Troika Group, West Africa's biggest marketing communications consortium.
So, the English beat us to the accent thing. The English have the fifth sexiest accent just ahead of us. It was a painful one. We'll get back to you guys at soccer. Yeah. So, and then I always say that if Durex or anybody ever wants to sell condom in Nigeria, don't say safe sex, say more sex. It will sell every time, but they never listen to me. So. Few things to note. Middle class population of 24 million people. That is the equivalent of 75% of the population of South Africa as a country, and that is the population of Australia. Just to give you a sense of the scale that we're talking about. And that population, the middle class, is just about 25% of the entire population. We've got a huge lower class of about 70%. You know, and that's why bottom of the pyramid marketing is a big deal in Nigeria, being able to sell to those guys. That's where the volume is going to come from. It's also why a lot of premium brands keep struggling within the market, because they haven't yet cracked out to sell to those people. And you also see the entertainment industry, which is very important. There's quite a lot going on in there. Let me just...
While Troika grew, Nigeria changed. Nollywood, the Nigerian movie industry, rose to become the third largest in the world, and together with a new genre of Nigerian music called Naija Hip Hop. They spread across the continent to dominate Black Africa's pop culture. This new Naija movement sparked a renaissance in Nigeria-centric thinking and gave the Nigerian youth a new confidence and pride in their identity. Gradually, brands began to realize the power of this new movement and the influence of its superstars over their audience. Soon, mega endorsements were being signed, and Nigerian celebrities today top the list of the wealthiest stars on the continent. Gone are the days where foreign celebrities held sway on television, on radio, or in the clubs. Brands in Nigeria compete fiercely to snap up the biggest local stars in entertainment.
So to give, I have a story that sort of helps me describe the influence of Nigerian music. I was in a club somewhere in Soho in 2010. Details surrounding the event cannot be shared in public. And we were inside there at some odd hour in the morning, and the DJ suddenly went, this was in October 1st, and the DJ suddenly went, today is Nigeria's independence, and then started playing Nigerian hip-hop music. And this was what amazed me. All the London guys in there were dancing to the music. They knew the musicians, they were rocking the beats and all of that, and it felt quite gratifying. And it was for me a sign that our music had gone global. And if you go, there was a time some years ago, if you go to clubs in Nigeria, most of the music were foreign hip-hop music from the US, from Europe, and a bit of it from South Africa. Today, if you go to the clubs, you rarely hear any foreign music. I mean, the music industry has developed so incredibly, and that it has gotten into the world of advertising. And I'll show you quite a couple of campaigns that we did using music, and I'll tell you a bit about what we did over there. Okay, so the last thing to note about Nigerians is that we're highly entrepreneurial people and driven by the possibilities of hope. The Nigerian exists between the spectrum of hope and fear. And it's important to understand this because there are some product categories that it is best sold on the premise of fear. And I will show you a particular campaign that we did around that, using fear as a trigger to drive purchase. There are some other categories where hope is the trigger that drives our hope and aspiration and all of that. And I'll also have a couple of campaigns in there that shows you how we've used the whole idea of aspirations and all that to drive. So it's important to always understand that the Nigerian consumer and the African consumer exists between that spectrum of hope and fear. And if you understand all the all the infrastructural and systemic challenges with countries across the continent, you know why this is so. If you live in an economy where things are not so predictable, typically in the Western world, once you have a job, you have a career path, you basically can access so many social facilities, you know, that can give you a fairly decent lifestyle. In Nigeria and in Africa, it is not so. The fact that you have a job sometimes can be it can be a problem. And you see why that can be so in a minute. And the fact that you have a job does not guarantee you anything. So your life is going to be built on the hope of a better life, either for you or your children. So issues of generational mobility come in, or it's going to be built on the fear that if I do not do certain things or organize certain things in my life in a particular way, life may not be better than this. So that there is always that dynamic of hope and fear going on in there. And so let me just introduce Insight to you in 2 minutes, and we can go ahead into the meat of our presentation.
The #1 creative powerhouse in Nigeria. How did we get here in 30 years? Well, our name says it all. Insight. That's a name we didn't just pick out of a box. It's our philosophy. It's our DNA. You find this core reflected in the 3 things that matter to us most. The first is our people. The right kind of insight has helped us pick everyone from our account managers to our creatives. Not just core ad people, but talents from across multiple disciplines make up our agency. Beyond the usual suspects, we've got doctors, engineers, lawyers, and even a couple of farmers. Insight has also helped us to create an environment where these talents can blend beautifully to produce innovative and effective solutions for our clients. Which brings us to our second thing, our clients. We put plenty of insight into picking our clients. We choose clients who understand and share the need for creativity. Clients who let us do our best work and trust us to grow their brands, knowing that when they succeed, we succeed. So yeah, we pick our clients with extreme prejudice. The third is the consumer. Every old ad agency and client knows why great insight is important here. We put the consumer at the center of everything we do, always. Not the consumer you're getting off-the-shelf psych and demographical mappings, or the ones that only exist in textbooks or tidy end-of-year reports. No, the real consumer. The real people who buy your services and products. Knowing these men, women, and children, really knowing them, is what we are about. We don't start anything until we have this arcane knowledge. So how do all these insights come together? That's what our creative process does. Basically, we put all those multi-talents into one room with a lot of tea, coffee, beer, and some rather special requests. Then they get down to mulling till something happens. Sometimes that something is barely a whimper, other times it's earth-shattering. We then take this precious something from all that heavy brainstorming and pass it to the creative. And they do something to this something that can't and really shouldn't be put into words. And then of course, there is the inevitable award, or two, or three. But what's a good ad agency intro without a couple of case studies?
Okay, so that's where I work. I have no idea what the creatives did to the video. It's too many colors. Okay, just to give you a snapshot of the media scene, this is important just as a background. I think the most critical thing for you to note in there is the high penetration for radio. You know, it's 91% in a country of 170 million people. That's huge, and that's why for you to be successful as an ad agency. In fact, in the agency we have our in-house radio studio where we produce radios and all of that for our clients. So let's talk about the Nigerian consumer, and I'm going to start off by talking about the village. And I'll show you a video that that helps to say a few things about the village. But I'm sure, have we heard the phrase before when they say someone is a villager? Is it a phrase that we're familiar with? Okay. Okay, I'll explain that in a minute. Let me just play this.
Now for a village, Oba and all the people gather for one Ogbonge festival. Now dear the thing happen. Malaria dangerous, and a mosquito they take doing bad work. Not a can play.
Anywhere una see this sign, now for there una go find better quality malaria prevention and treatment. Now mama, mothers against malaria attack, bring una this message.
Forget the advert, just, I don't know if you can see the context. This is essentially a village where there's a lot of hierarchy and the king rules. And so you see of course you can't touch the king. I mean, that's madness of the highest order. But this fellow sees a mosquito on the king and decides to help the king by slapping the king, you know, and he gets punished for it. And what you see in that short video, and you see the shock on people's faces instantly. What you see in that video are some of the nuances and components of the village setting, where there is hierarchy, and there's also a lot of community sanction and community incentives. Everything that is done in the village is communal based. There's a lot of community influence. In Africa, one of the things that polarizes Africa from the rest of the world, particularly the developed world, is that in the African and in a lot of emerging markets, it's basically about community. It's a communal lifestyle. You draw your identity from your role or your place in the community, not from who you are as an individual, your gifts, your talents, your preferences, and all of that. The individualistic construct to the human personality is located very strongly in the West and in other developed countries. But you don't find that in developing countries, and you definitely do not find that in Africa. So that I was in a discussion, and an American friend of mine was talking about how he has two Indian friends, and they were in love with each other, and they wanted to get married, you know, and one of the parents simply wouldn't agree, and he was upset. You know, classic love story, they should get married, etc., etc., and all of that. And I spoke and enlightened him, if you will, that the reason the parents disagreed was because one parent was from a higher social class, the other was from a lower social class, and in the developing world, in the emerging markets, it is not the couples that get married, it is the families that get married. And so the man basically, one of the parents just basically looked and said, we're not on the same social class, relating with the family will be an issue. But in the West, it is the couple that gets married, isn't it? And then you pick a wedding date and you go and invite your parents. In Nigeria, it's different. If you see a woman, a man you want to marry each other, you go to your parents, you tell them, then your parents will tell you that we would discuss and get back to you on your wedding date. From that point on, it is you are no longer involved in the process. You get given a wedding date. I like to call it allocation. You get allocated, you get allocated a wedding date, and the wedding event is planned by the family. They pick colors, they pick everything. You have one or two inputs and all of that. And if you are the man, you are voiceless. Forget it. You know, you are only expected to show up on the wedding day, follow the rituals, and you know. So that's how it is. You can't say I want to marry. And in some parts of Nigeria, it's so strong that if you're a man and you want to get married, you go back to the village. You're working in the city. You go back to the village. You tell your parents you want to get married. This is pretty similar to India in some respects. And then they don't look for a wife or a bride, if you will. They look for a family that has a particular pedigree. And then if they have a young lady there, then you are introduced to the young lady. And you are expected to fall in love. It is to your interest to make sure that you do. So our construct of love is very different from the West. Titanic was very funny. So the path of the individual is that almost every African then journeys from the village to the city, or at least aspires to do so, which is why you see that in the cosmopolitan cities in Nigeria, Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, you find that a lot of the population density is very high. And while you see in the rural areas, the population density is a bit lower, and it's typically you have the older people there. The young people, once they get an education, everybody comes to the city. That also creates the problem of huge unemployment in those cities as well, because there's only so many jobs and so many opportunities available. But everybody goes there because the city represents, is the symbol of aspiration, is the symbol of success. You know, back in the village, you're told by your parents or your family that you have to live here and go into the city. I remember my mom was a primary school teacher, elementary school teacher, and then my dad was just a clerk, you know. And it was drummed into my head repeatedly as a young man that whatever happens, I must not follow any of their two professions, because it was clear I would end up in poverty. You know, it was drummed over and over, and I had to leave and go to if I remember the day I went to the university, which was outside my state, my dad told me that once you leave the university, please go to Lagos and find a job and don't come back here, except to visit. Because back in the village, saying to his friends that my son is in the city is a symbol of pride. You know, what that does then is that it puts pressure on the son in the city to succeed. Okay? And that's why you see that Nigerians are very aspirational, they're very hardworking, and because you can't go back to the village and you're not a success. And there's a ritual of going back to the village periodically at particular holidays and events, Christmas holidays, Easter holidays. You have to go back to the village, but you cannot go back to the village the same way you left the village, you know. So you see all that entrepreneurial spirit there. The village represents both the background and is also the context of the African. It's where his aspirations are born, and they are being continually fed from the village. Okay? And then however, to the guys in the village, this man's life is a portal to a larger economic context. If you're an American, you have your 401k or whatever when you have a job, and then you have the pension system here in Britain when you have a job. In Nigeria and in Africa, your children are your pension. Once they have a job, you know, we have a proverb in Nigeria that describes this. We say that when the bush rat becomes old, he sucks the breast of his children. When the bush rat is a particular rodent in Nigeria. When the bush rat becomes old, he sucks the breast of his children. And whenever your parents share these proverbs with you as a Nigerian, they typically do when you start earning good income. You get this proverb. What they are telling you is that as you're making more money, more income, you have to consider taking care of them. You are literally their pension. So for every single person that leaves the village to the city, to the village, that person represents their access to the larger economy of the country. which is why sometimes getting a job is not necessarily a good thing. So, okay. And so in essence, the village then, while the African has left the village to the city, he essentially remains a villager psychologically. And so the village is not just a physical location within the country where he originates from. The village is also essentially the psychological construct that defines his identity, that defines who he is, how he thinks, and how he operates. And here I have 8 components of the village as I've deconstructed it. The first component here is community acculturation processes. And the whole idea here is that even though this individual has left the village to the city, the village establishes some regular processes that keeps him rooted in the culture and the values of the village. One of those processes is the requirement to always come back to the village during certain festivities. And when you go back to the village, you never speak English. You have to speak your local dialect and all of that. And if you're married, you have children. When you bring your children back, no matter the level of education you give them, they have to speak the local language. And this is done to ensure that even though you are integrated into the city, globalization and all of these other things are happening, you remain rooted. Okay? And that process is there. And certain expectations are in some parts, in the southwestern part of Nigeria, for instance, if once you make enough money to build your own house, you are expected to build your first house in your village, not in the city where you live. Okay? To remind you that this is actually where you belong. So you see a lot of people in Lagos who are living in rented houses, but they built houses in their village. Now, it may seem ridiculous because they only go to the village once a year and the house has to be a really big house, because the house is a symbol of your wealth, right? So, massive house in the village, nobody lives there like 11 months of the year. Guy is paying rent in Lagos, and then he's looking for more money to build another house in Lagos or whatever, or buy a house. But that's the expectation. So all of these processes keep the consumer rooted in there. Community affirmation is also something very key. You do those things that the community celebrates. Okay? It's very important. So I'll give you an example. If a woman is married to a man and does not have, by the first or second child, does not have a male child, there's an unspoken problem there. In some parts of the country, it is allowed for the man to divorce that woman so that, he can marry somebody else that can give him a male child. Of course, it is ridiculous for you to suggest that the gender of the child is determined by the male. Apparently, you were not educated by the gods. You can't even say that. The gender is determined by the woman, always. You cannot say that. You will get into a very serious discussion. However, if you're married to, and for the ladies, if you marry a Nigerian, please bear this in mind. If you are married to the Nigerian guy and then you have a male child as your first child, you are a hero. Literally. It sounds funny, but it's important. Because what that means is that because your first child was a male child, if the man dies, you are allowed to sit in community meetings in his stead, representing him. But if you have only female children and the man dies, you may not get access to any of his property at all. Because there's nobody that will carry his name. Carrying the name, it's a very important thing. Okay? So there's affirmation around that. There are also community sanctions. There are things that you cannot do, not because it is not right or logical or arguable, but simply because the community will frown on it. So the statistics will show you that the divorce rate in emerging markets and in Africa is lower than in the Western. The reason is that you can't divorce your spouse. You're not divorcing your spouse, you are divorcing the family. And since, remember that you did not marry your spouse, it was the families that married. So the families have to agree to divorce, and they will not anyway. So there you are. Once you go in, you're there. So it's just the way it is. You know, all of those factors are there. And this is a very important, it's very important. This is not just, it relates to marketing in a big deal. Because then you have people in relationship context that imposes certain roles on them that it creates conflict within them as an individual. So the question is, as an individual existing within this tension, how do I express other aspects of myself that the community would frown on, would sanction on? Very interesting marketing. And also there are community rituals, things that you have to do. One of the community rituals, for instance, is that your first child, you cannot name your first child. Your first child is named by your grandparents, you know, and not just by your grandparents, by all the elderly people on both sides of the family. So during the naming, we have a naming ceremony, by the way. There's no such thing as you have a child and then the child is named immediately. In some parts, you do that. In my part of the country, for instance, you don't name your child immediately. You have a ceremony 7 days after. And then all these elderly people come and they give you the names for the child. So typically your child will end up with like 8 to 10 names, you know, in birth certificates. Most of them with 15 letters. Yes, please.
Are you ruled by a religion or is it just a culture?
It is a blend of, it's a culture. It's a culture. And the culture does have its own, his question was, is this ruled by a religion or is ruled by a culture? And I said it's a culture. Now, it's similar, what you're describing is similar to the Judaistic practice by the Jews, but this is not from the Jews. This is actually from the culture of the particular part of the country I'm from, and is rooted in certain other cultural religious beliefs that your parents must go and seek the gods for 7 days to get the name from the child, for the child and all of that. And it's past, of course, no, they don't actually do that. They just sit down and name the child for whatever reason and all of that. But it's become part of the culture, you know. And regardless of the religion, people still follow this practice. Okay? And there are community rituals, as I described. And then there's the herd mentality. Everything is done together. Everything is done together. If you succeed, you must bring other people with you. Okay? Everything is done together. And I'll show you a video in a minute that shows that. The one that is very, very, very key is the value of an enemy. The African must have an enemy. Very important. You know, you must have an enemy. But I don't know about you guys, but in Nigeria, a movie is not a good movie if the bad guy is not really a bad guy, you know. It's very important. I mean, the hero is a useless hero if he didn't fight a really important bad guy. But anyway, the enemy is important because the way that success is defined within the Nigerian and the African context is that success is sort of defeating the expectations that certain individuals have had of you in the past, things that they said you could not achieve. So you succeeded at becoming a medical doctor because there was an uncle that said when you were young that you could never make it as a doctor. So you remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs? And at the top, self-actualization, that is for the West. Back here is not about self-actualization. There's nothing like, oh, this is what I want to be, and so on. No. There's nothing like this is what you want to be. This is what they said you could not be. And then you became that. Okay? You need an enemy. Did you have a question?
No, in West culture, this feeling of self-actualization can be motivated sometimes by what your family tell you that you, maybe you don't say that you will never be that, but maybe they want you to be or what. Or you are still influenced by the culture.
Yeah. But it's much, much stronger and so basic. It's so basic that if you leave your house in the morning, you're going to work, and on your way, you hit your leg against a stone. That means your enemies have decided that you must not succeed that day. So you go into the day more energized to make something of the day because of the enemies that in the morning were trying to stop you from entering into your day. It sounds funny, but it's very, very basic. And it has benefits for marketing. Because then if you're selling your product and you're selling to a particular segment that the value of the enemy is very strong, then what you need to do is to position your product as fighting their enemy. The whole thing of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. You know, it's very important. It's not something to, you know, it's not something to ignore. And then the pillars of religion. Religion is, I mean, is incredibly strong. I mean, I don't want to dwell too much on it, but all you need to do is just read, go online, read the news about the country. Religious leaders are very, very influential, are very, very strong, and it's like that. One time they did 50 most influential people in the world, and the 49th most influential person in the world is a particular religious leader in Nigeria who has the largest following in the country. And literally, you know, if a presidential candidate goes to his meeting and he prays for the presidential candidate in a particular way, the people take it to mean that this is the person God has said should rule the country. It's ridiculous in the 21st century, but I'm telling you, it happens. And if you look at the fact that 70% of the population are the lower class, they live their life in the dynamic of hope and fear, religion plays a very strong role. And then the final aspect of the village is that consumption, your consumption profile is a signal of where you are in your life's journey. So there are more conspicuous consumptions, you know, that you see in the African because it has to signal where he is. So if the man gets a new job, if he gets promoted, if he makes more money, he is most likely not to start off by increasing his investment portfolio. He's most likely to start off by buying a very expensive, luxurious car because he has to signal to the society that I have moved on. This is where I am. I used to be here, and this is where I am now. And then he will most likely move into a bigger apartment or buy a bigger house because people need to know that I am moving. Remember, this is a community mindset. They have to know. So the man, remember the guy that left the village to the city and has to come back to the village every Christmas, every Easter, or whatever festivity? Well, how does this guy communicate to the village that is successful? First Christmas, year one, he comes back home in a brand new car. So the parents is, good. Year three, he comes back in a Mercedes Benz. Fantastic. Good. Year five, he comes back in a Mercedes Benz SUV, preferably the G class, or what is called the G wagon. At that point, he has arrived, as we say it. Very important. And this is so real that, I mean, the status symbols of some of these luxury items and vehicles is fantastic. You know, there was the story was told of how a particular wealthy man, his natural preference was a BMW. When he had some money, you know, he went and bought himself the latest model of the BMW 7 Series. And then he drove this car home, and then his mother prayed over the car, which we do, by the way. Every new car has to be prayed over, you know. It's a pretty big ritual. If you buy a new car and they don't pray over it, it's seen as, people will frown on it. Just leave it that way. So he takes the BMW 7 Series, fantastic car, takes it home, and his mother prays over the car, and the mother ends the prayer by saying that, and you will buy the one that symbolizes that you have truly, truly arrived. And this guy was confused and had to ask the mom. And the mom said, well, if you don't buy a Mercedes Benz, you are not really a rich person. Now, this is regardless of the fact that the BMW and the Mercedes Benz were probably the same price point. And so this man had to go and buy a Mercedes Benz, which he then took home to the mother, and then the mother said, aha, now you have finally arrived. Do you see? It's very important. All of these things have to, you know, you have to do things that symbolizes where you are going. Another thing that falls under this particular component is also how you treat your wife. Okay, because the wife I'm sorry to offend the ladies with this, but take it in a good spirit. The wife is also seen as some kind of extension of the man or extension of his status. So the way the wife looks progressively in the marriage is a symbol of how the man himself is doing, you know, in his career. The good side is that the women get a lot of money spent on them. That's a good part. But let me bring it home to something more interesting. You cannot marry as an African and say that after you are married, you want to remain slim. You want to remain slim or slender. It's ridiculous. Yes. The reason is that it's unfortunate. Let me put it that way. The reason is that your physical size in Africa is a symbol of how wealthy you are. So if you are a slim person with 6 packs, well, forget it. You are a poor guy. Okay? And there's actually a video, I think I'll send the link to Peter to share with the class, of a particular musician that did a song, and the song was around pot belly, as we call it, and 6-pack. And the guy said in the song that people who go to the gym all the time to remain fit are poor people. That if you are rich enough and you are running a big business, you will not have time to go to the gym. And that Dangote, whom you saw in the video when they were talking about rich people in Nigeria, who is the richest black man alive today, does not have a 6-pack. So what are you doing with 6-pack? I don't know if you understand this. And if you marry your wife, and year 1, year 2, your wife is looking the same slim shape, your mother will call you and ask you, are you feeding her well? So you find that in a lot of African marriages, you find the man, 10 years into the marriage, the man is looking a bit trim, the woman is looking, you know, quite sizable. And when they go for event, the woman is well dressed up with jewelries and all of that, and the man comes out and says, have you seen my wife lately? You know, we are doing really well. You know, it's a symbol, okay? It's very important. Again, consumption profile as a signal of your life's journey. I recommend for the ladies, if you fall in love with a Nigerian and you want to marry him, please have this discussion early on before you get married. On the other hand, there's no pressure on you to remain slim. You can just keep. We have different ways of describing this. We never say that the women are oversized or overweight. We don't say that. We say they are blessed. You know. And yeah. So these are some of the things that go around. So you see this guy who is in the city is exposed, might even have a postgraduate degree from a university like this, international and all of that. But when you go to the construct of his daily life, he actually lives like this. He is still a villager. He's exposed, he's international, he travels abroad for summer holiday and all of that. But if you go back to his home, if you look at his life, he actually has all of these elements. And so that is why we say that the African and the Nigerian is still essentially a villager. And understanding the construct of that village mentality allows you to understand certain cues and elements that you can leverage on in order to market to him. There's an African proverb, I'm sure we're familiar with this. If you want to travel fast, you travel alone. Think of that as the West. And if you want to travel far, you go together. Think of that as Africa and developing markets. And so we say that Mark Zuckerberg would never have happened in Nigeria. It's not possible. There is nobody under 30 who is a billionaire. The average age of the Nigerian billionaire is 61. The reason is simple. If you make the first million, you will spend it on the family. Forget it. You are not going to invest it to start Facebook or no. There's nothing there. It's not. The community would not allow it. It's not possible. If you have enough money to buy a car, then the next car you buy should be for your parents or your brother who is trying to pick up in life. Okay, so you tend to see that in Nigeria and in Africa, if you are a young guy in your 20s and you're driving a Mercedes-Benz, the police will stop you on the road by default. Because you're not expected to have made enough money to buy a Mercedes-Benz. But if you are in your 40s and 50s and you're driving a Mercedes, the police will do like this and allow you to pass. They won't stop you. As long as you're driving a Mercedes in your 40s or 50s, you can never break a traffic law. Just go. But if you are 20s, you are driving a Mercedes, trust me, you will be stopped. Because there's no reason you should be in a Toyota, you know, or a Nissan. So let me show you this video to just understand a bit more. Did you see how the guy felt? Yeah? He's standing there and everybody is asking him for money. And he feels absolutely good. This is the life, you know. Once you get a job, your brother in school is your dependent, your auntie, your distant relative, everybody depends on you. Yes?
Isn't there any security issues with this? Isn't it easier to get money from rich people, just like kidnap them and tell them to send the money right now? Wasn't there a problem?
Yeah, that is an option. He asks that, doesn't this present security issues, you know, kidnapping and all of that? Kidnapping is not that prevalent unless you are extremely rich, one. And two, if you have lived life the way you should in this kind of context, which means that if, for instance, you are a rich guy and you normally have all these people around you, right? Your valets, your structure, your people. You should have been taking care of them to the point that they have personal loyalty to you. So in a way, it will be very difficult for anybody to get, because your security man at the gate, who perhaps maybe will tell them your itinerary, you're not only paying him his monthly salary, you are also buying his mother gifts on the birthday. You know, you are sending his children to school. So the guy has personal loyalty to you. And so to him, you represent his livelihood. So we say this thing back in the country, that when you see a rich man die, you see so many people who are not related to him crying. And oftentimes they are crying more than the relatives. And the reason is that the guy is so benevolent to them that his death symbolizes to them like the end of all the good things in their life. So you protect yourself again with the community. If you have moved through the social ladder properly, by always distributing wealth and all of that, as you go along, the community becomes your protection. And that's why typically when you see rich Nigerians or Africans being kidnapped or whatever, it's more related not with money, but maybe with things like politics. Maybe somebody's running for a political office and all of those things. That's typically, but it's never kidnapping for money. It's very rare. You've taken care of everybody. Why should they kidnap you? You know, they kidnap you, they lose, you know. And so one of the things that you find, and thanks for that question, because it brought to mind something, that even when you go to the churches on Sundays, when the people pray, they don't pray to God to help them. They pray to God to send somebody who will be their helper. Do you understand? So even the prayers is culturally situated, because the only way God can help you is to give you another rich person in your life whom you can depend on, not to help you directly through some other means. Again, the village mentality, the pillars of religion, how it all connects together. And so just a quick snapshot at the bottom of the pyramid consumer, which I've talked about in smithereens. But to build up on it, predominantly rural dwellers, 60 to 70% of the population. The city for them is aspirational. They are daily income earners with earning about 200 naira a day on average. 200 naira is about 65 pence, you know, a day on the average. And typically, there are multiple income earning households, including the children. Everybody that can work is trying to earn some income in the household. So typically, the children will go to school, they'll come back, and then go and sell some commodity also. And you see them selling in traffic and all of that, because there's a lot of traffic jams and everything, and that suddenly creates a different kind of distribution network. You can actually, a lot of the multinational products actually sell they use this to sell their products, you know. Secondary education is typically the highest, and the thought process is very linear and simple, you know, not complicated with a lot of science. Yes, I want to talk about this a bit. The icon of the housewife. Remember the context of marriage that I described earlier. You marry into the family, you are expected to play a certain role. The woman is an extension of the man, and so on and so forth. But what then happens is that this woman is expected, this housewife is expected to conform, but she's also hypocritical. The reason is that she's there and she has certain desires that are resident, native to any woman, but the social context does not allow her to do that. So home videos or dramas are one of the ways in which the woman vicariously experiences the life that society does not permit her to experience. How do we know this? We know this because data shows that on the largest cable TV provider in the continent, MultiChoice, they provide a service called DSTV. That on DSTV, the most watched channels is African Magic and E! Channel. Guess who is watching them? The housewives. Guess who they are watching on E! Channel? Any idea? Who? Somebody said it. Kardashian. Yes. They watch Kim Kardashian all the time because she's the woman that they want to be but will never be. I mean, you are married and you wear a tattoo. Are you crazy? What? It's not going to happen. You know, and definitely you can't divorce at whim and all of that. And you definitely cannot get to marry Kanye West and have a child and name the child not West. Seriously. It's not going to happen, you know. You marry properly, you have the child, then you are given the names of the child. And it's definitely not going to be geographical points or something like that. But this is, the desire is there, so that outlet goes through. And it also means that if you want to do communication to the housewife, you have to do communication that has some hypocritical elements into it. That's how you engage them. So everybody knows that everybody is having a lot of sex from the video, not from the speaker, from the video. Okay. The clip said sexually satisfied people. Okay. But the society, the community, does not frown on a man, a married man, who is having affairs, but frowns on the married woman who is having affairs. Okay? If this is familiar with you, it's okay. All right? So one time we were selling a product, home appliance, the freezers, the deep freezers, right? And if you've ever worked in that category, you know that the man is the purchaser in terms of giving the money, but the woman is the decision maker, right? Is the final shopper. So how do you sell to this housewife who is conformist yet hypocritical? What do? You give her the one thing that she wishes she could do. Have an affair. So what we did with that campaign was it was an outdoor campaign. We put it up, and then we put a fine, lovely looking housewife there, and then we had this caption: "Your wife is having an affair." All the men in town went crazy. Like, it became a discussion. No, how can women do this? And then at the end, the campaign revealed that your wife was having an affair with the particular deep freezer product that we're working on at that time. The men were relieved and bought their wives that particular product. Very simple. You know, it looks ridiculous, but it works. It works because it taps into that thing in them. There's huge power distance. It's a male-dominated society, and the way I like to put it is there is no foreplay required. once you are married, you are expected to have sex with your husband when he wants it. You know those books that say if you are married and you want to have sex with the woman, you have to buy her flowers from the morning, send her text messages, and, you know, build up the rhythm, have some, forget it. If you are married, do the thing, move on. You know, I mean, just, you know. So then, of course, there's a role for the family, the household. And there's not, more importantly, there's an external locus of control. The issue of being collectivist versus being individualistic, okay? The difference is basically the locus of control, isn't it? And so if you look at the individualistic person, if he goes to church, he will say, God, help me, but help me by giving me a business idea. But the collectivist guy will go to church or to whatever religion he believes in and say, God, help me, not by giving me an idea, but by bringing a rich man into my life who can be benevolent to me, okay? Because the locus of control is external. And what that means is that their locus of control is tied to opinion and religious leaders, is influenced by that, is influenced by the immediate family and the enemy. The enemy is very, very, very important. It's an external factor that determines your pursuit in life. The family is core, self is less important. Your identity is defined by the role you are expected to play in your family. Whether you are the firstborn, you're the secondborn, you're the lastborn, all of these other things. And children then are the future. They are not just the future, they are also the source of pension. I've talked about that a bit. You know, so if you're the first person in your family, for instance, to travel outside the country, maybe you have a job opportunity and you leave, you are expected by default at some point to bring one or two other siblings along with you. Remember, if you want to travel far, you go together, okay? And then the middle-class consumer, just to give you a snapshot of them, 73% of them shop in open-air markets, and I'll show you that towards the end. 62% use convenience stores. They represent 25% of the population, and 92% of them have post-secondary education. You know, 78% of them work in the public sector, and the remaining 28% of that own their own. 38% of the remaining 22% own their own businesses. 15% have traveled abroad, and UK is the most favored destination. If you, I read in the papers once at Heathrow, and if you go to Debenhams on Oxford Street, they actually have one of their stores where they've translated the writings on the wall, if you will, into Hausa language, because they checked the demographic and realized that the largest shopping demographic that they have are the Hausa people from the northern part of Nigeria. Okay? And a recent poll that came out about a month ago showed that at Heathrow duty-free, the highest shopping demographic are Nigerians, ahead of the Chinese. And you know what the Chinese buy, right? So that gives you an idea of how much money Nigerians are spending. All of that money is coming from these guys. Okay? TV and radio are principal sources of information, 48%, and increasingly have internet access. There's huge potential for online retail, which is blowing up right now. Huge. I'll show you some work for some online retail guys that we did. 96% are religious. Again, villager, pillars of religion. 75% of those believing that Nigeria will become better, not because of anybody, but because God will make it better. Okay? And we call this the EGB factor, which is pidgin for Ego Better. Ego Better is it will be better one day. Again, remember the dynamic of hope and fear. Okay? And then they have a culture of saving. They literally won't borrow from a bank and would rather invest in real estate for all of the reasons that we've described. It's symbolic. It's also one of the fastest growing sector in the economy in terms of return on investment. 78% mobile penetration, 81% Facebook mobile penetration. So in this particular mix of the population, you have certain dynamics that are close a bit to what you find in the Western consumer, but there are still some elements of it that are largely rooted in the village mentality. Top 10 countries with the highest Facebook mobile penetration, you can see Nigeria up there. 80% of those that access the internet in Nigeria access it from their mobile phone. And this is, the growth of mobile in Nigeria is huge because the largest telecommunication provider, MTN, came to Nigeria, and in 1 year, they made back all the money they invested. And today Nigeria is their largest market, even though they are a South African company. You know, the size of their business in Nigeria is equivalent to the size of their business in all the other African countries put together, for one simple reason. Nigerians talk a lot. You know, and there's a process to communication. If you promise me you'll give me something by 2 o'clock today, by 2 o'clock I'll call you, and the phone call will go this way. Hi, how are you? What's your name?
Petro.
Hi, Petro. Could you send me that stuff right now? Thanks. How long is that? 10 seconds. If you and I were Nigerians, oh no. He'll start something like, hi, how are you? How's your wife? How's your son? Oh, he went to that school. How are his grades? And then we'll have this conversation for 2 minutes. And then finally I will say, oh, are you still planning to send me that stuff today? And then now that 2 minutes is a lot of money for a telecommunications company. It's a lot of money. And if you happen to call your parents, particularly your mother, you must give her about 2 to 3 minutes to pray for you. So you can tell who a Nigerian is calling when you see him on the phone and he's just saying amen, amen, amen. He's talking to his mother. The mother is doing. And then after the 2 to 3 minutes of prayers, then you can then say, this is why I'm calling you. I wanted to ask after you, and so on and so forth. Of course, the telecommunications guys have made a lot of money. And all of that. So Facebook, people talk a lot on Facebook. They put all kinds of, too much detail on Facebook in general. And also, there's the impact of aspiration on consumption. There's the futuristic aspect of your consumption. Remember that what you consume from the village construct is a signal of where you are in your lifestyle. So there's futuristic consumption. And here is that there are some consumers that will live a moderate lifestyle, but they want a lifestyle that reflects on generational mobility for their children. So they will send their children abroad for education while living themselves in a modest home. And it is to their delight that their Nigerian children who have been abroad for years, in London, for example, come back to Nigeria with a British accent. That is a symbol of, progression. There's also symbolic consumption. A consumer may may live in a moderately furnished apartment, but drive a Mercedes-Benz. Why? Because nobody will see the apartment, right? It's not visible. But the Mercedes is visible. And it is important that he communicates where he is. So every time he drives out, you say he's a rich guy. But he can be living in a small apartment because you probably never visit him at home. And so the motivation here, again, is social affirmation. Remember the community affirmation under the construct of the village. And then there is realistic consumption, which is about buying brands that express who I am and where I am in life. And the motivation here is to communicate social mobility and some self-affirmation. Okay? Implications for brands. This is Chima. We call him the Oracle. He's basically our executive creative director. It literally looks like some of these, traditional people. And then he wrote this on the company website, 4 things that brands can learn from superheroes. And it just presents it fantastically. One is that your superheroes have extraordinary abilities, and so your brands must tie into the aspiration of their target consumers and leverage on their desire for social and generational mobility. So you have to communicate or engage consumers around the idea that using this brand is symbolic that you have moved exponentially in your social class. It ties with them. There must be, superheroes have a strong moral code and motivation. Superman doesn't kill people, Batman doesn't kill people, all of those things. These brands must tie into the locus of control of their consumers and leverage components of the village. Remember that the morality of this consumer is coming from the village, not from himself. So it's important to tie into that, okay? And then superheroes have distinct visual identity. it's important, the country is a very colorful country, and the continent in general. It's important that brands use this a lot. And then every superhero has a powerful enemy. Superman, Lex Luthor, Batman, the Joker. And this is village construct, the value of the enemy. So the brands must share a common enemy with their consumers. Either the enemy is somebody in your village, either the enemy is people that want you to, or some barrier in the society. There must be an enemy that your target consumer has, and then they share. So just a quick snapshot at the day in the life of our city dweller. I just run through this. Okay. So this guy wakes up at 6 a.m. in the morning, gets ready for work, 6:30, heads for work 6:45 a.m. He's going to arrive there at 8:30, almost 2 hours later, because of bad infrastructure, road traffic. These points are huge points of engagement. Guess what he's doing during this time? Listening to the radio, right? In fact, buying airtime around this time is very expensive, because guy is stuck in traffic, he can't go anywhere, he has to listen only to radio. So, and their favorite radio stations that they listen to, and these are opportunities to engage them. He goes through his day, he does his work, sends mail, does all of that, moves in through the day, grabs lunch very quickly, has about 30 minutes for lunch and all of that. This is also an opportunity for engagement, because probably eating in some local bukateria, as we call it, or local restaurant, where the radio is playing and there's a TV there. So he's eating, whatever you put up in front of him, he's going to listen to it. He goes back to work, does all of that, clears his desk, 6:30, heads to the bar by 6:30. He's going to eventually get home around 10:30, 11. Why does that happen? This happens literally every day. It's not on Fridays. Again, because of the traffic. So this guy has had a long day, he's tired, he doesn't want to sit in another 2 hours of traffic, so he goes to the bar and hangs out there. That presents huge opportunity for below-the-line communication. Because the guy is there, he's stuck in the bar, or bar hopping around, he's waiting for the traffic to go down so he can drive home. Because if he leaves at this point and drives home 6:30, he'll probably get home 9 o'clock. But if he leaves around 9 o'clock, he may get home by 9:30, simply because the traffic has gone down. And this is typically the daily life that people go through. And that's why you see that a lot of bars and restaurants are congregated around office environments in Lagos, because it just has to be like that, particularly the bars. Okay? So what does this mean for brands? It's important to identify the right moment of receptivity that is relevant to the brand. Certain categories are a more natural fit to certain moments of receptivity. If you're selling a mattress product, a foam product, for instance, it's better to do that at the drive time in the evening when they are thinking of sleeping than the drive time in the morning when they're trying to get to work. And luxury products, for instance, tend to connect better in branded environments. Think of using bars, okay? Think of using restaurants, okay? Because the nature of a luxury product, it has to be communicated through some element of sensual marketing and all of that. And household durables generally tend to bond better using entertaining radio shows. The issue of entertainment is very, very big. The best way to advertise in this particular market, we've heard the theory that consumers are not watching TV or listening to radio to watch your ads. They're there to watch content, right? And that your ad, the whole thing about interruption, it's actually much more stronger here. If you can get your communication to be part of the entertainment, you are going to actually make a lot of inroad. In-home and digital brand engagement is also very key for home care products and high involvement products for all these reasons. So what do you mean? How exactly do we then begin to use this? The LOL factor. Life is already hard. Make us laugh. Remember that Nigerians are the happiest people in the world. Why? Because we make jokes out of everything. If life is that hard, then the only way you can get through it is, spin things around with humor. And that's why we have our own version of text speak. How many of you have seen this before? But you've seen ROLTFL, rolling on the floor laughing. Yeah. This is our version of it in Pidgin. This means laughter won't kill me, die. In other words, I'm about to die of laughter. But this is Pidgin. So if you see this is Pidgin. This is our own way of saying it. Then I want to show you a case study of a particular humorous character and how it was used in a very specific communication in the telco industry. So the idea here is that sometime about 2 years ago or so, mobile telephony porting was introduced into the country. And this brought a scare, of course, as it does everywhere. And the largest guys in the market did this campaign to respond to that.
My number done dey portable, it means say I fit to carry am come to MTN. Easy to enjoy the coverage where no get back to. The number where you dey use now and before carry dey go, yeah. I don't port, I don't port, I don't port go MTN. Carry the same number, I don't upgrade to MTN.
You too can switch to MTN and still retain your number from other networks. Walk into any MTN authorized outlet and send the word port to 3232.
MTN.
The story behind this is that this character, this fellow is a famous comedian in Nigeria, and he had been the brand ambassador for another telco called Etisalat for a long time. So when the porting thing happened, MTN went and bought over this guy within 24 hours. And that's why you see that at the start of the communication, his color was green, which was the brand colors of the other guys. And then he turned around and it became yellow. And this was fun. And you see all the cues of humor, of music, of dancing, and everything in there. But the whole idea was to make people laugh about the whole issue of porting, while at the same time trying to get some customers to switch over to their brand. Okay? And then the other one that I'd like to show is a recent one that we did. It went viral, very huge. A serious joke about terrorism and Boko Haram. You know that Boko Haram is a big issue, the whole terrorism thing in Nigeria and all of that going on. And the elections in the country just ended. We did some campaign for the governor-elect of Lagos State. And one of the things that was a major theme during the election was the issue of security. You know, that whoever comes into government must be able to deal with the Boko Haram issue, all the security issues. And this was what we did with that.
Kai, if you think election can save you, then you are only joking. Wallahi, we will keep kidnapping your wives and daughters, we will steal your properties until you give us our rights. What we demand for is what we are asking. I have all my men on standby. As a matter of fact, we are ready to disarm and do anything to anybody. This election cannot save you, Pa. I have said it, and so shall it be. If you don't give us our rights, wallahi, we are going to destroy and destabilize this nation. I have said it, and that is how it's going to be. Aruma Sefi, have you people heard me? That is my final say. Ahmed! Ibrahim!
Yeah. And the lead character was, was a typology of so we did that. Tell real stories. It's more important to put the consumers, put what you're saying into their lifestyle. And I want to show you a quick case study on the SunMap malaria campaign. This talks about the issue of using fear to communicate. Out of time.
Malaria, Africa's biggest killer. In Nigeria alone, there are about 100 million cases every year with about 300,000 deaths. Mostly affected are pregnant women and children under age 5. Treatments are increasingly more expensive, and the regular use of insecticides to kill mosquitoes is also too costly for the people most at risk. Protection from mosquito bites remains the best defense against malaria attacks. The brief from the Malaria Consortium was to create an integrated media campaign to compel the target audience to use special sleeping nets treated with insecticides. The goal was to raise awareness about the nets by 20% and purchase by 10% in 9 months. However, with the nets costing about $10 a piece and users saying that sleeping under the nets was hot and stuffy, past campaigns had failed to produce significant results. A series of 1-minute-long trailers ran on TV stations across Nigeria over 6 consecutive days about a pregnant woman and her family and friends as they prepared for her first childbirth. The trailers told viewers to watch the live delivery of the baby on the 7th day. Spontaneous reactions sprang up everywhere. There was plenty of unsolicited coverage by Nigeria's biggest bloggers and on social media. There were debates about the decency of a live birth on national TV. On day 7, millions of Nigerians were glued to their TV sets to watch the live birth. What they got instead was an animated video of the unborn baby speaking on the dangers of malaria and refusing to be born until his father went out and got a mosquito net. A baseline survey only 2 months after the 1-week campaign showed that 95% of the viewers said they were now more likely to buy the nets. Purchase grew by over 10%. 42% of traders believe the ads caused the increase. 32% of traders said buyers mentioned the ads as the reason. Household usage of nets grew by 12%. Sales of nets remained high, even after the rainy season, when mosquito attacks were far less.
You see, that we actually did this for 7 days. Symbolizing aspiration, I'll skip this and just show you this. If you can get them to sing about you, I want to show you a campaign of, how you use music and all of that. Let me skip this. I'll show you this particular one. This is for the largest online retailer in Nigeria, and they wanted us to do a campaign for them to get people to buy them. And we figured the only way to do it was to use music. Or the best way to do it, actually. So.
I need a great deal, the best price I can get. That's why I shop on Jumia.
We've got some orders, fire on all cylinders. We'll not rest until it's packaged and delivered. Do everything it to take, baby, we ain't got time to waste. Customer satisfaction is the way. We're not gonna stop until it's okay. Oh yeah, let's do this. Put our best into this. The online store you can trust. We're not gonna stop until it's okay.
Jumia, the online shop you can trust.
This drove their sales by 400% in the last quarter of the year. And not only that, you can see the rhythm of it. Jumia, Jumia, and that, a lot of people were singing this and all over the place. It became nice ringtones and all of that, and it helped. So we have to stop here now because of time. I don't know, do we still have time for questions, answers, comments, anything?
Maybe
Peter?
a couple of quick questions. Yes, that would be good. So if anyone has any.
Yes.
You were talking about the influence of religion in there. Is there, what is the religion there? Is it a really crucial religion or academic or religion?
The question was about the influence of religion, and it was asking what is the religion like, which religions are basically there. The country is split into 49% Christians, 49% Muslims, 2% traditionalist, traditional religion. That's the split. Yeah.
I'm just curious, you were talking about success. When people are successful, they're seen as like not slim and they put on more weight and that sort of thing. But everyone in the commercials are very fit and what have you. So how does that come for me?
Okay. She's asking about the whole issue of being successful, not being slim, and all of that. The slimness thing is a new trend that's coming in, and is strongest actually among highly educated middle class. Highly educated middle class. That's where it's strong. Even the middle class that have just the basic post-secondary education. Because remember that it's not that the woman does not know that maybe she wants to be slim or whatever, but it's the fact that the society still views the woman in a particular way, and she wants community affirmation. So So therefore, it's there, it's unspoken, but it's very strong.
I was just curious because in the advertisements, everybody is very
Slim.
right? So I was wondering if people are perceiving it differently now.
The perception is just growing, right? But because the focus is not on the family, the focus is on purchase. When you see other advertisements that are more family oriented, almost always the woman, particularly the housewife, is not a slim person. Yeah. Okay, I think she had her hand up, and then if we can just take it. Yes.
Do you think the whole concept about the villages you just explained to us will change and become a bit more like the Western countries?
Okay, the question is, do I think that the concept of the villagers will change over time and become more like the Western countries? My answer to that is honestly no. It will remain like that for a long time because you still have 70% of the population that are in the lower class who will not have education beyond the secondary education. Where you see the changes will be among the middle class who are highly exposed, and it will take a generation for that to happen. The next generation, they go abroad, they are more exposed, they're on the internet, that might change a bit. But for the rest of the population, it's still there. Yes, please.
What are the businesses that are really emerging?
Okay, question is what are the businesses that are newly emerging? The service businesses are picking up gradually. The fastest growing sector right now, business-wise, is retail. Retail is growing significantly, particularly online retail. In fact, in the recent economic report that we got about the country, was that even though there was sort of like a flattening of consumer spending in the first half of the year, if you will, because of uncertainty about election and all of that, the consumption or purchase on online retail kept going up. That didn't stop. So that's like one of the fastest. If you wanted to come into the market to set up a business, I'll say start an online retail business. You know, I'm not sure we can discuss after. Or do you think?
To Pika's questions about the online retail, I saw at the end of the commercial, you could still pay in cash and they would come with portable,
The POS.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So the whole, on the one side, you can send money with your phone to your family members. On the other side, when you purchase online, you still pay in cash?
Yes. Yeah, what is happening there, what you're seeing are both a mix of cultural nuances and real infrastructural gaps. You can still send money on your phone, but you're sending the money using some PIN. It's mobile money. So you're sending it to the village, and they can just go to a local chemist, show the PIN, and then get the money. So their only connection to the financial system is through the neighborhood shops. That's it. You're the one in the city, and you are more connected, fully integrated, and all of that. Now, in terms of the payment, the reason there is, for the online retail, they say you pay when you pick up your goods or pay with this thing, is because online retail is relatively new to the country, and one of the major challenges they are facing is consumer trust. Can I trust that the product I see online is the product that will be delivered to me? Okay, so we've not gotten yet to the level where you go on Amazon, you see it, and you are okay, you pay, you move on. So I get the product, I look at it, I check it, it's fine, then I pay. That's what's going on there.